You know, it wasn't that long ago in simpler times that when people talked about the wall, we were talking about Pink Floyd. That song was released in 1980, 40 years ago, and we have been talking about security at the border with Mexico for that long. And it's worth talking about how the discussion has changed since that time.
Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back and they can cross and open the border both ways.
And that is, of course, Ronald Reagan, idol of conservatives and Republicans, talking about open borders during a Republican presidential primary debate with George Herbert Walker Bush. Ronald Reagan couldn't get on a Republican debate stage now with that position, but in 1980, that made a whole lot of sense. So what's changed? Well, for one thing, in 1980, there were only 3 million illegal immigrants living in the United States, or 1.3% of the population. Now, there are over 11 million, or 3.5% of the population. We have gotten to this place because for decades, politicians have promised to reform the immigration system and have failed to do so.
What I can guarantee is that we will have, in the first year, an immigration bill that I strongly support and that I'm promoting, and that I want to move that forward as quickly as possible.
In the first year?
In my first year.
And of course, he did not. President Obama had a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate for the first 2 years that he was in office and chose not to introduce immigration reform. The question is why? Because politicians amass huge campaign funds and secure power by talking about the problem and never solving it. And after 40 years, the problem at the border has become only worse. And as the two sides stir up the passions of their bases, America has devolved and been divided by political tribalism, fueled by political hatred and disagreement. It is fitting that the symbol of this divide is a wall, a big, beautiful wall.
And it's going to be a beautiful wall because someday they'll name it after me, and I want it to be beautiful.
Donald Trump was elected with that promise. He said it over and over again. The question is, like President Obama, why didn't he do anything in his first 2 years in office when he had a Republican majority in the House and a Republican majority in the Senate? And so now we start the 2020 presidential campaign with the government shut down and no end in sight as both sides stir up their bases with this issue for profit and power. And once again, we watch the fight played out on the cable news station of our choice that plays to our political bias, and we cheer for our sides, and nothing is accomplished. And to think, this all could have been solved 40 years ago if we just would have listened.
Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence.
I'm Larry Menti. Talk to you again soon.
Recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back and they can cross and open the border both ways.